what is up guys, my name is Oleg, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to review one of my favorite watches in my collection. It's Seiko Flightmaster. I had this watch for about a year and it constantly wins wrist time, even to this day. I wear it at least once a week on my wrist and I love every minute of it. It's a pilot's watch, it's a chronograph, and it's quartz movement. So let's get started with the review. Alright guys, so here's my Seiko Flightmaster. Reference number for this watch is SNA411P1. It's a quartz movement pilot watch with a chronograph function. That's a mouthful. So a little bit of a backstory about this watch. I purchased it about a year ago from Creation Watches on eBay. I looked at their profile today. As of recording of this video, they don't have this specific reference in stock. However, they do have a different reference. It's all gold finishes. Other than that, I believe it's the same watch. Now, the gold finishes on this watch are not really my cup of tea, but if it's something that you like, yeah, you might want to consider buying one. I paid for this one about $200 US, as I said, about a year ago. Looking at eBay right now, they're selling around $300 US. So the price has gone up, but about 50%. That really doesn't do anything for me because I really like this watch, without spoiling review too much, and I would never sell it. I think this is definitely a keeper in my collection. So let's get started with the case dimensions and case finishes, and just a little bit of a closer look at the watch itself. So you have a case diameter of 42 millimeters, a lug to lug of 44 millimeters, a lug width of about 20 millimeters, and a thickness of 13 millimeters. Alright, so we have all stainless steel case here with a stainless steel bracelet, a 2 finish tone. So we have a bit of a shiny finish or a polished finish with brushed sides. All these links are actually separate, so these middle links are separate as well. The clasp here, it does have a bit of a cheap feel to it. It's not as luxurious as some of the other clasps. The release mechanism is pretty good, and the lock here is also very good. It does feel very secure on the wrist. I went swimming with this watch many times and I always felt very confident in doing so. It never feels like it's gonna fly off the wrist, especially with this lock mechanism at the top, and it's signed with the Seiko logo. And two buttons release, not too bad. We do have solid end links here. Alright, let me just see if the camera can focus. It's focusing on the wrong thing. Alright, so there you go. We have a solid end links. We do have solid links all throughout the bracelet. And overall, the bracelet is actually really good. I know Seiko sometimes has a reputation for having bad bracelets on their watches. This one, I really do enjoy, and I don't want to change it on the NATO strap. I know a lot of people do change it on the NATO straps. I prefer this watch on the bracelet. It also gives it nice weight and a good heft to the watch. I mean, when I wear this watch, I feel very manly. It's a very tough, very robust looking watch. It just feels very solid, very well put together. Also, at the top here, we have a bezel. It's a bi-directional bezel, so that means it moves in both directions, unlike a diver watch when it only moves in one direction. On bezel here, we can see a lot of different markings. So we have some yellow, some white, and what those are basically different rulers and different conversion charts for pilots to figure out things like their fuel consumption and conversions of kilometers to miles and all that kind of stuff in case one of their instruments fail in a cockpit. To be honest with you, I've never used any of these in my life, and I doubt very much that I ever will, but it does give it a nice pilot aesthetic, and I just like the overall design. The gliding mechanism on this bezel is very nice. It glides very easily, but not too easily where it feels like it would glide by itself. You do have to apply a little bit of pressure, but overall it's a very nice feeling. These teeth on the watch are also done very well. They're not too sharp and they're also not too dull, so just the right amount of grip. We have a Hardlex domed crystal at the top. Look at that dome, it looks really nice. Harlex crystals are proprietary to Seiko's. They're definitely not as hard as sapphire or anything like that, but they're not too bad. Unfortunately, I do have a scratch already on the crystal. I'm sure I can buff it out very easily, but I don't want to. I think it gives it a little bit of a nice character and just reminds me of my adventures that I had with this watch on vacation. I don't think the camera can really pick up that scratch. All right, let's take a bit of a closer look at this dial. So definitely a big selling feature of this watch is the dial. As you can see, it's quite busy with all these markings on the side and all that writing. You have the tachymeter and it's very busy, but it actually looks really nice. It kind of reminds me of Breitling Navitimer. Of course, the designs are not similar, but just with that busy dial. For some reason, in my mind, I have that association. And of course, both are Pilot watches. So let's go through some functions that we see. On the 3 o'clock position, we have a date window. At the 6 o'clock position, we have alarm, as well as a second time zone. So this watch does have dual time zones. So this dial here, this sub dial here, serves a dual function. On the 9 o'clock position, we have a seconds sub dial. So the main seconds hand is reserved for the chronograph function, and this sub-dial seconds hand is what serves as a keeper of time for a regular watch function, I guess. And the last sub-dial here is the chronograph minutes sub-dial. One other thing to note about this dial is actually look how much smaller the actual dial is as comparing to the size of the watch. This watch on the wrist looks a little bit smaller than it actually is. So I think this one wears at around 40 millimeters as opposed to its actual size of 42. However, if you have one, let me know in the comments. Do you agree with that, or maybe you're of a different opinion? Another thing that I really like about this dial, it's actually on an indent here. So it's not completely flat, and well, it's actually nowhere near to be flat. So you can see that this writing here, I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up. Well, I'll do the best I can. But the dial, the main dial, is actually quite a bit lower than all the other readings here. So the readings are kind of done on an angle. So yeah, I'm doing the best I can to let the camera pick that up. Another cool thing here, we do have applied lume, so each hour marking is the applied lume. We also have lume on both hours and minutes hand, and there's a little bit of a lume on this yellow seconds hand for the chronograph. Speaking of the chronograph, we have the two pushers on the side. They're screw down pushers, so let me unscrew them and show you what the chronograph function actually looks like. Yeah, the chronograph on this watch is very nice. So you can see that the seconds hand motion is very fluid, very smooth, unlike a normal chronograph seconds hand when it jumps. This one, they did spend some time on perfecting it, and I quite like how it sweeps all through the whole dial. And once we pause it here, it functions exactly like any other chronograph. You stop and you start with the top pusher, and you reset with the bottom pusher here. And just look at that motion. I'll do that again. And we reset it. Very fluid, very smooth. One thing I forgot to mention actually here, look at the Seiko logo. It's actually applied. So a lot of little details on the dial. Some are applied and some are printed on. So all these markings, I believe, are all printed on. However, the Seiko logo is applied, as well as the outer ring for this sub-dial at the bottom here. You can see how it's shining and reflecting light. So I believe that one is actually applied. Another great touch on the watch. I mean, they didn't have to do it, but they did, and it does look much better. I guess that's why these watches are so desirable, because of that attention to detail. Now let's take a look at the hours and the date change. So again, it's a screw down crown here. There's nothing quirky about that at all. You pull it out all the way. stops the second hand from ticking. Again, it's a quartz movement, so not that difficult to do that. And the time change is very simple. To do a date change, all we have to do is push it once, and the date window glides very, very easily. It's a very smooth transition. Let me push it all the way in and screw it back down. So overall, I really love this watch. I love how robust it feels. It feels very heavy. It feels very heavy duty. I also like that it's quartz, so I can just take it from the drawer, pop it on my wrist and go. The chronograph function is very useful, and that water resistance helps the overall robustness of this watch. I brought it with me on vacation last summer, went swimming in a lake, went river rafting, and it performed just fine, and I was never afraid to ding it or scratch it or anything like that. So overall, love this watch. I love the little accents with the yellow second hand and the yellow markings on the bezel, and the overall quality and feel of this watch are very nice. However, the watch is not perfect, so for me to give a honest opinion and an honest review, here are a few little things that I noticed around the watch that are less than ideal. Number one, lack of micro adjustments on the clasp. It'd be nice to see a few more holes here for micro adjustments. Number two, the clasp. It does have a bit of a cheap feel to it. Again, the watch is not that expensive itself, but I'm doing a review. I paid my money for the product, so I was hoping for a little bit better quality on the clasp. Number three, the lack of a signed crown. Again, not a huge issue, but I feel like having a signed crown would have improved this watch drastically. Number four, and possibly the biggest complaint with the watch, is the fact that it's a Hardlex crystal. Even though it looks beautiful, it has that distortion because it's domed. I still would have preferred a sapphire crystal because of that scratch resistance. I already have a scratch on this glass, and I only had it for a year. So I think the sapphire glass would have improved the overall value and quality of this watch, which is already very, very high. Now, value for money, is this watch worth it? Yes, it's worth even what it is now, $300 I would pay for this watch. The best way I can describe how I feel about this watch is, as soon as I purchased it and after wearing it for a month, I immediately wanted to buy another one. Of course I didn't, because I don't need another one of identical watch. But you know that feeling when you really like something so much, you want to buy another one just in case something happens to the thing that you wear? Well, that's how I felt about this watch. So if you're considering one, I recommend it. And I hope this review has helped you to sway either way, towards the watch or against it. Let me pop it on my wrist and give you a quick wrist shot before I go. All right, so here's the watch on my 7¼ inch wrist. As you can see, it wears very well. 42 inches, I mean, pretty much fits any size of wrist. If you have a little bit of a small wrist, I think anything under 6½ inches, maybe consider a bit of a smaller watch. But even with 6½ inches, I think you can still pull it off. All right, so thanks for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Like the video if you did, and comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel. I release new videos every Friday. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye.